turn to page 326 and look at the nice little table. Now, when you film, McLean, do you get this up here or do you just get me?
I'll get you both when to start.
Okay, so you're on top of it.
Use them at your cinematography.
Come on, man.
So here's the red blood cell. 5 million per microliter is about the average number. We could count that, you know. Did anyone place the little graph disc and focus where you could kind of see the blood cells with the graph in the background? Anyone do that? Is that a yes?
I think I'm yeah.
Y'all need to do this. If you counted how many were in one of those squares, you could. That's a single square, and then you could multiply that by itself, and you would get how many is in a cube that size. And that's a cubic millimeter. And there should be 5 million of them in a cubic millimeter. Isn't that interesting? Mm-hmm. You should try it. Computers can do these blood cell calculations like that. They look at it, the computer counts them up, bam. It'll tell you your blood count, and it'll tell you the count of each of these white blood cells. It'll tell you your neutrophil count, your eosinophil count, your basophil count, and your platelet count, and those are indicative of different diseases. You know, some diseases cause a lot of neutrophils. Some diseases cause a lot of eosinophils, allergies and such. So you can learn a lot by counting the blood cells. Is that interesting?
Mm-hmm.
And like I say, a person with leukemia, they have way too many white blood cells. That means leukemia means the white blood cells are reproducing out of control. Because a white blood cell is called a leukocyte. Leukocyte means white blood cell. So this tells what the blood is made of, this little picture here. And so you need to sort of familiarize yourself with this picture. The blood has the formed elements are the cells that we just studied. Platelets, red blood cells, and white blood cells. And here are the types of white blood cells. So we kind of studied this half yesterday. The plasma has all of this stuff. And that's what your reading's about tonight. I have to tell you, it's pretty boring reading. Because it's just what's in the plasma. Do y'all remember what the plasma of the blood, what I'm talking about there, the liquid portion of the blood? You may have seen plasma in little bags. They'll have blood plasma just in the bags, just the plasma. And it's kind of yellow bag of fluid. Have y'all ever seen this like in a hospital or something? So what is all in the blood plasma? Well, there are electrolytes. The electrolytes are like sodium and potassium. They're ions that are important for your the workings of your body. Calcium, remember calcium's important in moving your muscles. Sodium's important in what process? Do you remember?
Muscle? No.
Nerves.
Nerves, getting your nerves to function. Remember sodium on the outside? Do you remember what's on the inside? Potassium, that's an electrolyte that's important. So these things are floating around in the blood. Electrolytes. Most of it's water. 92% of the plasma is water. So there's a lot of water in there. There are proteins that are important. Albumins, globulins, and fibrinogen are the 3 important proteins. Let me see if I have a little table of the proteins. Here they are.
How good are you?
I mean, when y'all grow up, y'all can be like me one day. Albumin, 60% of the proteins that are in the plasma are albumin proteins. And they come from the liver, they're made in the liver, and they help maintain the osmotic pressure of the blood. You can't have your blood be too watery, and you can't have it be too thick. And the albumin proteins give it the right amount of thickness. So most of the protein in the blood is this albumin protein that contribute to the thickness of the blood. Some of the proteins are called globulin proteins. You have alpha globulins, beta globulins, and gamma globulins. And the alpha globulins transport fats and vitamins around your body. So the alpha globulins are transporters. They're like little limousines or little cabs. And if a fat needs to get somewhere in the body, it jumps on an alpha globulin. There are some vitamins that jump on an alpha globulin to get from one place to another in the blood. Beta globulins do the same thing, but they transport different types of lipids and vitamins. So both alpha and beta are transporters, like I say, like little taxi cabs in the blood. Gamma globulins are also called antibodies. Have you ever heard of antibodies? We learned about these in AP Bio. Antibodies are little Y-shaped proteins that will attach to foreign invaders that are in the body, disease-causing organisms. And the little Y-shaped proteins attach and stick to these invaders and cause them not to hurt you anymore. So a gamma globulin is a type of antibody. And so these globulin proteins, they call them globulins because they're big, thick proteins. These globulin proteins make up 36% of your proteins. And then 4% are fibrinogen proteins. Fibrinogen proteins are proteins that will stick together and form long fibers. And if you ever look at a scab, you know, you cut yourself and it scabs up. If you took a scab and looked at it under the microscope, you'd see these little fibers. And they're the fibers that help make these threads that kind of tie together your wound and trap blood cells and such to form a scab, trap platelets. The little fibers are made of this fibrinogen protein. And so it plays a key role in blood coagulation. That's clotting. That means clotting. So those are the albumins, the globulins, and the fibrinogen. Those are your proteins. 7% of your plasma is those proteins. So if 92% is water and 7% are these proteins, what percentage does the rest of them make up?
1.
Only 1%. Very good. As y'all said at the same time, that was beautiful. The waste, your waste, you're talking about urea, mostly ammonia, a little bit of ammonia. Have y'all ever heard of these types of wastes? It's the stuff you pee out. Your kidneys strain the urea from your blood and you end up peeing it out. But there's waste floating around in the blood. There's also nutrients. Your sugars and your fats and your proteins and your nucleic acids are floating around in your blood to a small extent. And the cells will take those in and use them. Vitamins and hormones, too, dissolve in the blood and float around in the plasma. And then you have gases, carbon dioxide, which is a waste product that is produced. And do you know how carbon dioxide gets out of your blood? It's in a certain organ you have that helps you get rid of carbon dioxide that builds up in your blood.
The lung.
Yes. And how do you get rid of it?
That's a good question, but I'll let you
It has something to do with your lung.
I'll let you take care of it.
You can think of it.
Exhale.
You breathe it out.
She's on fire.
The carbon dioxide collects in your lungs, and you breathe it out. And so there's a little bit of it in your blood, but as soon as your blood gets to your lungs, it comes out of your blood and you breathe it out. You're constantly breathing out carbon dioxide, which is a waste product produced by your cells as they make energy. Hopefully you learned that in biology. You should have. Oxygen is floating around, dissolved in the plasma, and that gets in your body through your lungs, and it goes to your cells. Your cells will use that. And there's nitrogen in your blood. There's nitrogen. Did you know most of the air is made of nitrogen? Does anyone know the percentage?
80.
A certain percentage of the air is nitrogen.
80.
62.
80. Definitely
72.
80's close.
79.
79% of the air is nitrogen. And when you breathe, it gets in your blood and your body, and it just floats around, and then you'll eventually get rid of it through breathing. So some of that is in the plasma. So that's what's in the plasma. If you memorize this table, you'll have a pretty good idea of what's in your blood. This is why, though, it's hard to make artificial blood. It would be great if scientists could come up with a way of just making blood in the lab. Pouring enough sugar in there, just like you make up a recipe of something. If you pour enough water in there and sugars and proteins, you ought to be able to come up with blood. There's so much stuff in it, though, it's really hard to do that. And a lot of the stuff is living, like the white blood cells and the red blood cells. They're living cells that you can't just come up with. But one day, they're working on this. They're going to get it one day. They're going to figure out artificial blood, and then nobody will have to donate blood anymore. Won't that be a great day? That day is coming. It may happen in your lifetime. I've been reading about it in the magazine. And that'll save a lot of lives. Ooh, she's doing a bone marrow transplant. You ever heard of that?
Yeah, it's not very.
They go into your bone marrow and they pull out with a needle. They go in there and they pull out the bone marrow. And it'd be very painful to say. No. Oh, no, that's not a transplant. That's just a biopsy she's doing. So they're taking out the bone marrow to look at it, make sure it's good.
Hey.
Okay, check this out. This picture's normal blood. Doesn't that look familiar?
It sure does.
What kind of white blood cell is that? Neutrophil. And what are these cells? What are they called? Erythrocytes.
Erythrocytes.
Here's a person with leukemia. Look how many white blood cells they have. All you got to do is look at the blood under a microscope, and you can tell if somebody's got leukemia.
That's
Too many white blood cells.
Why are the red ones all clamped together?
Like this?
No, the red ones.
Oh, these?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question. They look like they're clumped up, don't they?
Erythrocytes.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's something in the blood that makes them clump. You need to read about the clotting mechanism in blood. And here we have a tear in a blood vessel. So somebody has stabbed you with something, or you step on a tack and it breaks the blood vessel, and you're going to start bleeding. Blood will escape through the tear. And that's no good. So the first thing that happens is the platelets, the little pieces of cells that float around in the blood, they stick to the exposed wall of the vessel. See, when this blood vessel breaks, there's this collagen fiber here. And they're hanging out. These collagen threads are hanging out. Just like if you were to tear some clothes, you'd have little threads hanging out everywhere. And these collagen threads that hang out, the platelets stick to them. And you can see where these platelets are stuck to the collagen. Now remember, a blood vessel is 3D. It's not just flat. It's a tube. So there's threads hanging all over the place, you see. And the platelets will stick to all those threads and kind of make a clumped area. And then also platelets will stick to one another when they're not moving. So when a platelet is still like that, other platelets will stick to it. And it forms this big bunch of platelets. That's called a platelet plug. And that will help control the bleeding and stop the loss of your blood. This is the first step to healing a wound. You need to know about this. Because you cut yourself all the time. Scrape your knee or whatever. The next thing that happens is these fibrin threads start to form. The fibrin proteins proteins that are floating around in your blood start sticking together. It's a chemical reaction that starts whenever you break a vessel. And the fibrins start sticking to one another, and you can see this fibrin thread will form. Whoops. Thought I had a picture of the fibrin thread forming over the platelet plug. These fibrin threads start to form, and this is what it looks like under an electron microscope. So these fibrin proteins stick together and form these threads, and then red blood cells will be captured in the mix. And this whole thing of platelets and fibrin threads and red blood cells forms a big mass. That's called a scab. So that's if you were to look up close at a scab under the microscope. This is the whole chemical process I talked about. And it's not that important. You don't need to memorize it. But one chemical called prothrombin activator activates another chemical which causes these fibrin threads to form. Fibrinogen, that's the protein that floats around in the blood. Fibrinogen eventually is converted to fibrin through this chemical cascade. We don't worry about that much in this class. Look at this blood vessel right here. This is disgusting. Here's a normal blood vessel. This is how yours probably look right now. Here, this is all this yellow stuff is fat that has been deposited in this blood vessel of this person. And this is where the blood goes. So, that person has a lot of fat in their blood vessels. That'll stop up your vessels eventually. If the entire blood vessel fills with fat, blood can't get through.
My stepdad has that.
Has a bunch of fat in his blood vessels?
No, atherosclerosis. Yeah, that.
Yeah, that's fat in your blood vessels.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Most old people have it. Because,
Okay,
well, I mean older. Once you start not playing sports all the time, you'll start building up fat in your blood vessels. And anyone who's even, even myself, as great a shape as you probably see me in, definitely got fat built up in my arteries. And what it'll do is it'll give you high blood pressure over time. And as you get older, you'll see your blood pressure will start going up. And the best thing you can do is to keep exercising. But this is going to get harder for you as you get older. Because it starts to hurt to exercise. And you don't want to do it as much. But watch the amount of fat in your food. If you eat foods that are lower in fat, you won't get a whole lot of fat built up in your arteries. If you work out, that fat can be used by the body for energy. So if you're working out a lot, burning a lot of calories, your body will start burning that stored fat up. And that'll help you. I mean, you can clear this artery given enough time. And if you go on a diet and exercise enough, your body will burn that fat up and it'll get back to this. But that's rare. People don't, as they get older, they don't start working out more. It's usually the other way around. Okay, so that basically covers 12.3 and 12.4. I want you to read those tonight. Again, it's kind of boring reading, but it's info that's going to be on the test, so you need to read it. Tomorrow we do 12.5, which is blood types, which is a really cool day.
When's your next test?
Our next test
Mr. Rose, is that all?
is
Is that all you think?